So first and foremost, welcome along. As I say, week 7 of the ARC360 webinars. Again, big thank you to our corporate partners and partners who you can now see on the screen. It's with their support that we can actually kind of piece this together on a weekly basis, and feedback has been absolutely fantastic and support from the industry. So thank you all very, very much for that. It's great to hear from so many people and receive updates throughout the week. So really do appreciate that from everybody. As with the webinar on a weekly basis, I always like to put forward a little disclaimer. Things are changing so rapidly at the moment in terms of how this whole pandemic situation is moving. So again, just like to put this little disclaimer up and read it out loud. So the views and opinions expressed during the following webinar are those of the individual contributors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the contributor's employer, organisation, committee, or other group or individual. A little side note there as well, please respect any all contributions, and we encourage you to join the conversation via the interactive functions available. So, thank you very much, first and foremost, for joining us, everybody, and hello to all the panelists. Now, just to put things into context, again, we're here to talk about very much kind of focused on the industry. We all know, obviously, the pandemic and the health situation that's out there. You know, is really hitting hard on a global scale. So just to kind of put our bit in context, we're just looking at it from an industry perspective and how it is impacting across all businesses within our sector. So we've got a great panelist lineup today, and what I'll do in the usual fashion is I'll allow them to introduce themselves. And what we've asked them to do, again, as normal, is kind of just introduce yourselves in terms of who you are, job position, what, if you like, the job involved on a day-to-day basis pre-pandemic, and a very short, brief timeline in terms of what it has involved since, if you like, lockdown kicked in. So we'll come to you first, Miles, if that's okay.
Yep, no problem at all. Thanks, Mark. Afternoon, everybody. If I may, I'll just start with a brief introduction to Nationwide, if people are not familiar with who we are, what we do. So Nationwide Vehicle Recovery Assistance, not to be confused with a repair organisation of a similar name, was created circa 10 years ago with 3 objectives, really. The first being to improve customer outcomes, the second to reduce and control costs for insurers, and the third really to improve the communication between all parts of that supply chain, which invariably involves a recovery organisation, the police and an insurance company. So the 20 years previous, there wasn't a great deal of communication. It wasn't beyond the realms of possibility that a vehicle would be lost in transition. It would be in storage for 30 to 40 days. Nobody would know where it was, etc. There was no communication, and obviously that had a detrimental effect on the customer outcome. So Nationwide was kind of created with all of those objectives in mind, and the group, if you like, is split into 2. So Nationwide manages a network of independent recovery agents, circa 700 of those, and provides services to insurers, TPAs, accident management companies, brokers, etc. Has a European arm as well, does vehicle repatriations for insurers as well. And then secondly, they have LJ Transportation, which is a wholly owned recovery organisation with its own drivers, its own trucks, circa 200 trucks, and works with the police, mainly Essex Police, Metropolitan Police, and then the vehicle breakdown club, so the AA, RAC, etc. It's quite unique. The reason I put that in context is that's quite unique in our market. Neither it's one or the other. So we have the combination of understanding what a recovery entails from an equipment point of view, a man point of view, that allows us to control those costs when recovery agents are submitting their bills. So that is quite unique in the market. And from the very first day, we had the tick in the box, if you like, from the government in terms of essential service. So the vast majority of those agents have remained open throughout this period of time. In terms of my role, I've been in the industry circa 25 years, either at insurers or predominantly in and around the supply chain. So my role is twofold really: sales and marketing and network management. So that's what I did prior to the pandemic. What do I do now? Pretty much the same thing. The conversations with the insurers are now about understanding some of their challenges. You know, I don't find anybody's ready to rip up a supplier agreement right now. So obviously sales per se have taken a back seat, but a number of conversations around what challenges they face. The network management side, as you can imagine, we furloughed some of the staff that were delivering that, so that's turned to a more remote piece of work. And then I guess my two changes are looking at the sheer breadth of product that we offer, and we'll hopefully talk a little bit more about that later, but that will be, you know, looking at some of the additional things that we can do over and above our BAU. And then the way the business is set up, fortunately, I guess, to some of our colleagues in the supply chain, we don't build up huge amounts of debt with insurers. We have two ways of setting up an account, either cash accounting or bill. The earlier of those is the most predominant one, where the collecting salvage agent or the approved repairer pays on collection of the vehicle before it's released. So we're not succumbed to a huge amount of that debt. But what you do see is some of that debt building up. So yes, I've become probably the least scary looking debt collector that you've ever seen.
Fair enough. Thanks for that insight there. Neil, we've already kind of mentioned, or Miles mentioned, salvage and stuff, so we'll come naturally onto yourself.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Good afternoon, everyone. So I head up the UK's largest network of salvage agents. We process something like 500,000 vehicles a year across the network, and we service insurers, fleet operations, public sector organisations, including the police. In my role, I guess I'm lucky enough to work with a board that combines really good salvage expertise along with some really strong insurance expertise. And then set behind that, we've got a very dedicated and very competent group of people at our HQ. I guess apart from the operations, a key part of my role is building relationships with industry bodies and trying to collaborate as much as possible, because I'll come on to it later on, Mark, but one of the things that is quite clear, and I think this pandemic is bringing out, is that there's not one individual part of the supply chain that has got all of the answers. And I think that our experience in this pandemic is that collaboration across your supply chains actually can give you a better result. That kind of takes me on to what I'm doing right now. So I guess, like any business leader, really, I'm two main priorities at the moment. One is to look after our people, and the second is to protect our business. And if I'm doing anything that is not related to one of those two things, then I shouldn't be doing. I guess that a big thing for us as a business is focusing on our clients' requirements and working with our clients in partnership. Things are very fast moving. I think, thinking back 5-6 weeks, some of the messages that were coming out from government were quite contradictory and a little bit vague at times. So things move really, really fast. And, a key thing for us is trying to work with our clients through that. In addition to that, I think that, it's really important that we keep an eye on what's going on outside our own four walls. So that's a big part of my role. And aligned to that then, of course, is communication, and making sure that communication is really good. I'm sure that I'm not the only one to say that actually, whilst volumes into our business have dropped, personally, I don't think I've ever been quite as busy. And my phone doesn't stop ringing, or I don't stop ringing on my phone. So, comms is really important at the moment. And then finally, I think that at the moment, whilst we've seen a real reduction in volume in some areas of our business, we've seen an increased demand in other areas of our business, and trying to manage that increased demand and come out with the right solutions at the end of it is something else that we're doing at the moment.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks very much, Neil. So hand over to you, Dan, in terms of a little insight. I don't know if you've got some background noise going on there somewhere, Dan, because it just keeps skipping across to you a little bit. So just to make you aware, but if you can give us a little bit of an insight in terms of S&G response and how things have panned out for you guys.
Yeah, apologies for that. It's probably the broadband connection over in Bolton. It's not the greatest up here. I'm Dan Chesney. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director at S&G Response. We are an accident management business operating on both sides of the fault and non-fault spectrum. The business has been going for about 10 years, and we touch around 10,000 motor claims a month. My role pre-COVID, if you will, is probably the same as post-COVID. It's just there's a bit more emphasis on some of the aspects of it post. I'm responsible for the external customer relationships, for identifying and articulating our proposition, and speaking to the market and actually understanding what people need and want, and trying to utilise the toolkit that we've got to create something a bit bespoke and special. Yeah, I mean, operating across the insurers, the fleets, the broker markets, and the manufacturers, we get quite a breadth of customer types and needs and wants, and we've seen the impacts of COVID across the board. There's no doubt about it at all. Post-COVID, been a lot of time spent scenario planning, and we've come up with hundreds of scenarios. We're not really sure where it was going to land, but it's important that right now, just as Neil was saying, really, there's two things that we've got to do. We've got to really look after the culture that we spent so long building within the business to deliver the service that we do. And we've got to protect the business itself. Cash is massively important. And yeah, there's a heck of a lot of focus gone on in the business around making sure that post this, we come out bigger, stronger. And actually what you do is you learn a lot from the events that are unfolding in front of us, because in every situation there's always an opportunity to grow and get better.
Yep, that's great stuff. Great insight. Now, Chris, we'll come to you. You're obviously a regular face on this now on the webinars, but again, just a quick intro in case anyone's joined us who's not familiar with yourself, and kind of the MBRA's activities. We'll come on a little bit more in depth very shortly, but just where are you at the moment, Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, so we're the National Body Repair Association. Our day job is to look after the interests of circa 800 body shop members in the UK. Obviously, we'd like to unite the whole country and have everyone into membership. But yeah, obviously, in the most recent period, our role has been brought to the fore. Really, I don't think ever before body shops have needed representation quite like this, where their kind of relationships with their key work providers could have been put to the test. So we're very enormously grateful to have had the opportunity to represent our repairers through this situation, and our job really has been to protect their interests and keep them healthy, and also to help them navigate their way through the complexity of this, which has been presented so many different challenges to them. And our mantra is to really to go through the information, to look at all the challenges that represent themselves to body shops, and just to make it as simple as possible for people to navigate their way through it, understand what to do next. And that's pretty much what we've been doing throughout this.
Great stuff. Thanks, Chris. Now, we've obviously talked over the weeks in terms of where we've seen the industry go. So again, 18th of March, our first webinar, we were on the cusp of something. Everyone knew that, but very little had actually impacted. Within a couple of weeks, what were we, 70, 80% down in terms of claims volumes, notifications. I'll come to you again, Miles, just very briefly. Are we kind of at a plateau? Are we starting to see things come out of this now? More traffic volumes, certainly from where you stand in terms of recovery operations and these kind of things. How does it look from your specific angle right now?
As a direct answer to your question, yes, I think we are. I mean, we saw a very quick drop off at the end of March, as you say, the first seminar, everybody was like, I'm not sure whether anything's going to be affected. Very quickly we saw a 35% reduction at the end of March, and a further reduction of 50% against the previous month in April, and overall that's circa 65% down on sort of year-on-year comparison. And that's proportionate. I've taken out any kind of new business that was acquired that wasn't in place by April 19 to come up with that stat. But yeah, over the last couple of weeks, we've probably seen a 10% increase in those numbers. If you take the LJ side of things as a direct comparison, because it is slightly different, remembering that LJ work with the police and the breakdown clubs. The breakdown organisation via a system called Apex issue a number of industry volumes and data, etc. And they've seen, again, over the last 14 days, a 20% increase in numbers. There's still 45% of the same time last year, so a 55% reduction. And interestingly, the number of home starts in April has exceeded the number of home starts in February for the very first time. So you'll gain from that obviously there's a lot of people that are not using cars for a long time and then struggle to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, I'll come to you in terms of, again, kind of the volumes that you're seeing. Plateaued out, starting to increase anecdotally. We're kind of hearing things that there might be a little bit more traffic out there and might back Miles's numbers up.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the impact of this pretty immediately, to be honest with you. Sort of the first week after the partial lockdown, you saw a decline, and then ever since then we have been about 80% down on volume. As I mentioned before, we get visibility of the whole marketplace from direct deployments through to claims being referred on to us, as you will imagine. And, we get to see parts of the supply chain, like the commercials, the building businesses. You can see that across the whole sort of network, the industry, everything has absolutely plateaued down. We do see peaks and troughs. There are some trends around times of day, as you can imagine. We have got some customers who have remained active throughout the period, and yeah, claims do still happen. But yeah, like Miles says, there's very much a plateau, and it's just about planning what it looks like when and if they start to lift these, lockdown. That's kind of where we are, and talking to our customers and understanding where they're, edging their bets. But we're all a little bit in the dark around it, to be honest with you, as you know.
And Neil, sort of same question or same scenario to you. What has been, apart from obviously the volumes, but you're noticing anything different coming to salvage in terms of vehicles that have perhaps been written off differently, or higher values and things like this?
No, not particularly, Mark. I think, as the other guys are saying, the volumes have been a major hit for us. So very quickly, we were down at about 25% of what we would expect at this time of year. Mentioned earlier on, with keeping an eye on, commentators in the market. We've seen the AA reporting in the last week an increase in breakdowns, and then also an increase in traffic. I think TomTom also reported a movement in congestion levels at some locations around the UK. And I see the AA more recently have now trying to speculating on what driving behaviour might be like afterwards. And I think that our volumes really are reflecting that commentary that maybe over the last couple of weeks, as Dan was saying, we've seen an increase of probably 10% in our volumes, but prior to that, it was a pretty immediate stop. But to answer your specific question there, Mark, not seeing anything different coming to us, nothing specialised. It's just a lot less.
Okay, and Chris, what's the kind of feedback from the repair community in terms of any change in the last kind of tail end of last week? stroke early this week?
I don't think they've seen a lot of change. But, you know, Ian Pugh talked about lead and lag measures last week. One of our sister associations, the Petrol Retailers Association, they had seen sort of fuel sales down 70% below the norm, which is kind of where we've been sort of seeing, you know, claims levels and stuff like that. Last week, Brian of the PRO reported that fuel sales are only down 55%. So, you know, it's clear that people are getting their cars out again, putting fuel in them, and sort of getting out there. You know, you can see the roads are getting busier. I spoke to Aldertex yesterday as well, Dave Shepherd. You know, he's seeing, because they see claims as well as assessments, and he was saying there's quite a lump of sort of claims that are out there that haven't made their way to repairers yet and turned themselves into assessments. Forgive me if I get the number wrong, but I've got a feeling he said something like 21,000 claims are sort of sitting out there that haven't really made it to the repairers yet. So it's impossible to know exactly how fast it will all return, but I think the number of vehicles on the road are a pretty good indicator of what we're going to start to see. And you know, I am aware that lots of repairers are starting to sort of gear up for coming out of furlough, you know, getting back to work and start to get things ready. Lots of repairers have brought in some of their admin staff. They can sort of see if they can contact customers to get stuff back in, seeing if they can get the parts. Because if they haven't got the job ready to go, they don't want any technicians back on site, because they'd just be sort of standing around idle. So, you know, our job in this, when it all does get going, really, is to give our members step-by-step guides, very clear sort of recommendations in terms of how to get their business back on its feet again.
Okay, great stuff. Now we'll come on to, if you like, the re-emergence scenarios. You know, it's the bit that everyone is kind of looking for the answer to. Nobody has got the answer right now, but Dan, I'll come to you. You kind of you know, touched upon, you've got 1,000 scenarios in the bank. Are you, you know, specifically edging your bets on one particular scenario, kind of re-emerging out of this, or you know, what parameters are you kind of working within, if you like, or is it a blank sheet of paper?
I'd love to know. I'd love to know what it is. No, you know, we plan around the delivery of our service and continuing to bring to the table what our customers have signed up to, if you will. So for us, it's around, you know, how do we activate the wider network? How do we make sure that our supply chain are fully engaged with us? How do we remain up to date on the whole network and understanding exactly where everyone stands? Because, you know, we have got such a broad range of supply chain partners that we deal with, and you know, in the repair network alone, a couple of hundred repairers who we are maintaining direct conversations with all the time, because the moment they lift this lockdown, you know, you only need to drive to Tesco once to realize that people have forgotten how to drive. So there's going to be a massive impact straight away. From an internal point of view, you know, we've invested so much in making sure that we had business continuity plans, but not one of them was to take every single person out of not only our office, but our business continuity office and stick them all in the home environment. Well, there's a whole architectural change going to have to come now, which brings in everybody back to the business, which will fundamentally again change. You know, we will not want our sales guys driving all over the country doing hundreds and hundreds of miles when everyone's got so used now to doing calls like this. So there will be a change in that. You know, we all know that, you know, commuter miles will probably dip, but the number of commuters on the road will increase. There's been research that's come out that's saying that now. We talked a bit earlier around second-hand cars and, you know, the kind of the profile of the vehicles that will be on the road. Well, you know, we operate on behalf of businesses where we're massively looking to always repair over replace. We're looking at green parts and looking at different solutions. Well, all of a sudden, you've got a total spectrum of vehicles that could change on the road. And so straight away, we're, you know, speaking to the likes of the recovery agents, the salvage agents, the repairers, the technology, everyone to kind of understand how and where everyone stands in the situation. You know, we think that 30% of our staff will be based from home permanently going forwards. it's totally changed not only our industry. You know, this industry is one of, you know, the global population that will change from this. And I think that, you know, as much as you try and scenario plan, what I can say is the moment the tap starts turning back on, we're going to make sure that everything's spinning and all the bells and whistles are clean, ready to go.
That's great stuff. Yeah, great insight there. And Miles, if I come to you, I mean, I suppose you're on the front line of all of this, continuing to operate throughout, supporting key workers and staff. Re-emerging from this, if you like, your role has also changed a little bit in recent weeks in terms of collection and delivery, specifically for body shops, a little bit more. You know, again, what are the thoughts on kind of the re-emergence from all of this?
Yeah, I guess I've been talking to a lot of insurers as well around the same things, and I guess Ian talked last week, didn't he, about the kind of worst and best case scenarios, but you know, it feels like the right numbers, if there is a right answer, is looking at sort of 80% of normal volume end of July, maybe end of August, and then working through to something like 90% of the volume that you were used to previously, end of November, January 2021 maybe. So I guess we buy into that. That might be more hopeful than realistic, but as Dan said, nobody really knows the answer. What I found quite interesting, I think there'll be a lot of people on this call that are used to completing tender documents for insurers and the like, and that's an inevitable question about your BCP plan and all the various bits that you have to do. I certainly haven't, and I don't expect anybody else has, to actually replicate that with a question to the insurer to say, can I see your BCP plan? Because obviously, you know, everybody looks at that as being almost a little bit of a tick in the box. But I think from now on, I'll probably ask the insurers. And I'll probably give a little bit of a shout out to them. I know the repair industry perhaps hasn't seen support from the insurers that they'd want, but they've been really good in my own personal experience around, you know, flexing processes that would normally take months to decide on in just a matter of days or weeks, and where you are chasing money, having the ability, both from a system point of view and a staff point of view, to pay those from a home office. I've been really impressed with, really. And then, yeah, absolutely. I think for me, the longer lasting thing of this is about some of the breadth that we've extended already, as you touched upon, the delivering of courtesy cars, the moving of damaged vehicles from one site to another within group body shops, the conversations around delivering cars. You may have read yesterday, there was the dealers are now looking at this end-to-end vehicle purchase online, much like Tesla do already, with then a delivery of that vehicle. Now they're not used to doing that. And then exploring further some of the conversations we'd started pre-COVID, to be fair, which was all about building a business case for the body shop to say, do you really want the cost of these trucks and the people? You know, more often than not, a body shop will use an expensive technician to go and collect a car because he's got 5 minutes to do so, you know, and that's false economy. So really, we're looking forward to hopefully expanding those conversations and building a real business case with the repairers to reduce their costs moving forward.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks for that. Really good insight. And Neil, same question to you. And I've already kind of said to you, I've seen you've posted some interesting sort of scenarios or debate starters on LinkedIn. So you obviously, as a business, you're thinking a bit differently in terms of how we may re-emerge and what, you know, your role, I suppose, might be within all of this.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I think that, you know, for us, all the way through this, we've been taking a lead from what government is saying. Chris mentioned you go outside and you can see more cars on the road, but, you know, Prime Minister on Monday was talking about, what did he say? Fire up the engines of our economy one by one. And, you know, that clearly is an indication that there will be a phased return to normal, whatever normal is. So we need to be mindful of that. And actually, you know, because we see ourselves as a partner, we work closely with our clients, and we're talking to them about the insight that they can give us on that. So, for example, and I'm not trying to give Boris any ideas at all, but let's say that he relaxes lockdown on those aged 30 and under. Well, insurers will have data that tells them how many of their policyholders are aged 30 and under, where they live, what type of jobs they do. And I would imagine that, you know, I'd be surprised if insurers are not using that insight to help them with their own operational planning. So, you know, clearly tapping into that operational planning will help us understand the likely demand on our services. So that's one thing that we're doing. I guess that in normal circumstances, approximately 1 in 4 of all motor claims end up as a total loss. But as we've been discussing on here, you know, how is that likely to change? There's been some suggestion that that the roads will be a little bit more quiet, and as Dan was saying, you know, will people be returning back to work, or will they be able to do a bit more from home? So we don't quite know what that's going to look like, but also we know that people's driving skills will probably be a little bit rusty. And if there's less congestion on the roads, maybe speeds will increase. So any crashes that do happen might be a little bit more severe. So we're crystal ball gazing around that a little bit at the moment. I guess that, you know, specific to the salvage market, Mark, if we take the used car market, so you know, potentially there is a benefit here for insurers in that the used car market is starting to suffer. So you know, a few weeks ago, HPI provided some really good insight to say that sales volumes in the used car market had really reduced, and that was starting to impact values as well. And to that end, you know, that means that total loss payments, pre-accident values will be lower than what they were pre-COVID. So that should be another benefit to insurers in this circumstance. But I guess the flip side to that is that the values in the salvage market follow values generally in the used car market. So, you know, what's that impact on salvage returns going to look like for insurers? In addition to that, you know, when the lockdown was announced, some of the salvage kind of scrap metal buyers closed, and the ones that hadn't closed were offering scrap at something like £25 a tonne. Now, you know, a reasonable price, not a good price, but a reasonable price of scrap, something in the order of £90 to £100 a tonne. So it's a huge drop there in the price of scrap metal as well. You know, and this is all really important for insurers. It's not the salvage market kind of throwing the hands up in the air. This is important for insurers because salvage income is generally the second largest income to an insurer behind its premium.
Fascinating, great insight. Really appreciate that, Neil. And Chris, I'll come to you there then, because you know this kind of whole chain starts to piece together a little bit in terms of, you know, the implications. What happens to one, you know, implicates on another. With Neil's comments, you know, what kind of is, you know, pending potential impacts on the repair sector from what Neil's just said?
Yeah, I mean, you know, none of us know exactly what it's going to be like. There's all sorts of scenarios sort of, and thoughts around, you know, more home workers, are they going to be driving more whilst they're at home? We just don't know. And I think Ian Pugh's point from last week was good, you know, kind of plan for the worst and hope for the best. You know, something that's going to be important for repairers as things start to get going again is understanding how to bring people back into work again, and how to do that in a controlled way so that they don't bring too many people back and not have the work for them, and, you know, working in an inefficient way. So, you know, having a close examination of the furlough scheme is a good part of that. You know, the furlough scheme, you have to have somebody on furlough for, I think it's a minimum of 21 days. But, you know, that can be extended as much as you like. And just because you've furloughed employee once, it doesn't mean that you can't do it again. So, you know, you could bring somebody off a furlough and put them back on again. I think the key point is that once you put them back on again, you have to do it for 21 consecutive days. So you might well be better off thinking about just, you know, keeping certain people on furlough. Funnily enough, the French have had a different scheme for that altogether, where, you know, you can literally dip in and dip out, completely dependent on how the employer feels is best for them. It might be a little bit late for this, but the MBRA are going to write to the Chancellor and ask if we can have something similar here, because, you know, I think our members and industry in general needs that real flexibility right now to be able to sort of, you know, bring people on and off according to how much work they're getting. Another interesting thing that came out this week was the kind of bounce back loan scheme. I don't know if everybody saw this, but, you know, for body shops that were struggling with cash, and they're definitely struggle even more for cash once new work starts coming in, and they're going to have to start paying for parts. Don't forget, a lot of the parts suppliers are still cash on delivery, you know, and the terms that they're getting are still poor, you know. So I know I'm flitting around here, but, you know, we've done some work on this. The average body shop is losing between 6 and 10% of their normal terms at the moment, buying parts from suppliers that they don't normally get them from. So, you know, the kind of concessions that we're getting from insurers, although extremely welcome, you know, really are just about wiping their face at the moment, because the body shops are experiencing those kind of losses. But yeah, I mean, the bounce back loan scheme, I think, is between £2,000 and £50,000, and you don't have to pay anything back for the first year. I think it's interest free for the first year, and then the rest of the money can be spread up to the following 6 years after that. So I know some of the details come out. You know, the MBRA are going to get a lot more details out about that and how to go about it. And I think that'll be a real boost for body shops that are struggling to find the cash to really get going again. So I think that's going to be great, and we'll give them a lot more flexibility than they've had, you know, in this sort of period in between. And the furlough scheme seems to be working well, of course. You know, we've had lots of body shops apply, get on the portal, and a lot of them are getting paid within 3 working days. So, you know, hats off to the government. I think they've done a pretty bloody good job of that.
Great stuff. And Chris, I'll come back to you again, because obviously you're pretty active in the markets last week with a sort of charge out guide for body shops. That subsequently went out for feedback from industry and has since gone live, if you like. What's been the feedback on what you put out to market?
Well, yeah, I mean, we last week we put out the open letter to, I think it was sort of 36 different work providers. We did get feedback from, I mean, obviously the body shops really like it. You know, I think they've generally been, you know, positive about the fact that the MBRA have made a bit of a stand on this, because they're all losing money. You know, I mean, there might be some that are breaking even. They've been lucky enough to, you know, maybe fill their body shop up to 50% of normal capacity and able to break even. Anyone that's not achieving that kind of level is losing money. You know, the contracts that they're on at the moment, and this is nobody's fault, obviously, but, you know, the contracts that they're on at the moment are very low margin. They're all built around high volumes of work going in. There's no volume guarantees in there, of course. And as the work has dropped off, you know, it's just exposed really those contracts for being, you know, totally unsuitable for this current situation. Yes, you know, body shops insurers have made some attempts to assist with that, you know, but they haven't gone far enough, really, in our opinion. So the COVID charges, somewhere between £10 and £30, you know, really don't cover the costs of cleaning the cars as they go in, as they go out. You know, that's the courtesy car and also the repaired vehicle. That's more in the region of about 80 quid. As I've said about the parts discounts, you know, yes, 10% at least is necessary, but that really is just you know, is not covering any part of the fact that their overheads aren't being covered because of the low volumes. So I think coming out of this, we're really going to have a long, hard look at, you know, the way that contracts are put together, you know, the kind of deal that the repairers are getting, because this has exposed really the fact that, you know, it wasn't enough, and they've really struggled with this. So partnership is a word that's used a hell of a lot. You know, if it was a marriage, you know, you imagine sort of going home to your wife and only one of you is getting food and the other one isn't. You know, it hasn't felt as much of a partnership as we'd like. Albeit, I do fully understand how difficult it has been for insurers as well. You know, and underwriters and work providers. It's a tough situation for everyone. But yes, so we've published those charges. They're a recommended guide. You know, temporary charges. We're saying just do it for now. Every business, I think, has got the right to at least break even, if not make a profit. You know, every other business in every walk of life right now is doing that. They're finding a way to adjust their charging mechanisms to allow them to break even or make a profit. So I can sort of, you know, I'd recommend body shops do it. The kind of feedback that we've had, probably about 1/6 of the people that we wrote to have responded. None of them have responded negatively. None of them have said, don't do that, it's not what we want. They're all being very sympathetic. Most have gone to great lengths to point out the measures that they have taken to assist repairers. Of course, I've argued that they haven't gone far enough. But yet to be seen how they get received. You know, I would encourage any body shop that has put these charges on to share your experience with us at the MPRA, body shops at rmif.co.uk. Put the work provider brand name in the title. We're really keen to, and you know, of course, if anyone supports our repairers at this time and, you know, steps forward to become a hero, my God, you know, will we be shouting about it? So yeah, it remains to be seen how it's really going to get received at this point, Mark.
Okay, great stuff. Dan, I'll come to you. You know, you obviously spoke before we came on air, and you fully sort of empathise with obviously the body shop situation, but you're kind of, you know, caught between that rock and a hard place in terms of, you know, how you work with your customer base as well. So, you know, just kind of expand on that, not necessarily going into, you know, detail in terms of the charge guide and stuff, but just how you sort of see the situation from where you sit.
Yeah, absolutely. What I would say is, I don't think we're caught between a rock and a hard place at all. You know, the repairers on our network, without them, we wouldn't have a business. And we don't treat them as suppliers. They are partners of our business, hence the reason why we try and invest as much as we can to support them. This conversation around supporting them through this current period, we are, you know, absolutely all ears to, and we're supporting as well, because on the side of the contracted insurance contracts that we have, we can't mandate the rates into the market, but what we can do is certainly influence them. So we go back to our customers and our partners, and we absolutely support the need that we need to be delivering a sustainable model. And they are alive to it, and that comes back in many different ways. It comes back in some of the stuff that Chris has referred to earlier, hourly rates, etc. What we see on the other side, or more on the non-fault, if you will do, is when a cost is presented, it ultimately moves up the chain. And this cost, therefore, is something that is examined by everyone as part of that process of, you know, settling the claim, if you will. And it's therefore, that's why it's a much more global conversation that needs to be happening around accepting these terms, because whilst on one side, like I said, we can only influence it, we can't mandate it. On the opposite side, we could be the party that's presenting these costs and therefore supporting them. But it's difficult unless all parties are already sat at the table and willing to have the conversation about understanding what exactly it is and where it lies. And, you know, we do, like I said, we do a lot of work on this, and we do really try and support the repairers and the networks we've got, because without them, we just do not have a business. It's really simple. You know, it's a massively important part of our day-to-day job. There's no question about it. You know, we are an aggregator of volume, and we put it all through one central process. But the commercial terms are dictated by the principles, ultimately, of market trends. So, you know, we're an absolute advocate of making sure people are protected. Like ourselves, you know, we've all had to restructure finance facilities, and we're all in a totally different place. And you know, it affects all businesses. We're absolutely all ears to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're very much it's a volume-based industry that we're in. You know, all five of us, four of you sat there, are very much based on volume terms and conditions, and how can you kind of gauge that situation when currently nobody really understands, you know, where it's heading or when it's going to end. So I think it's almost a case of picking up the pieces afterwards, if you like, in a sort of roundabout way. Miles, I'll come back to you in terms of so where you sit, nationwide vehicle recovery. You know, where would you kind of, as a guideline to the industry, you know, where would you suggest people are sort of stakeholders of the industry are investing their, you know, energies right now?
Okay, just before I come on to that, Mark, if you don't mind, just pick up on something that Chris talked about with regards to being helped. I think what we've seen, which sort of is the opposite to what the insurers have done or not done in a lot of their supply chain, especially the repairers, with the vehicle clubs, is we've seen an injection of sometimes just pure cash. You know, this is not a loan, that's just about pure cash investment into their recovery partners so they can continue to provide that service. And indeed, in some cases, an increase in the fee that we get for doing that. So, you know, those club organisations have taken a really proactive approach to the way in which they deal with LJ Transportation in terms of being one of their suppliers, which I thought was, you know, quite a contrast to some of the things that Chris articulated that insurers are not doing in that space. In terms of where I'd invest my time, I guess, you know, without trying to get a sales pitch in, obviously we talked about some of the business cases that we think the recovery industry can help with, that delivering of courtesy cars, the collection of damaged vehicles, the cost saving that we can offer to do that, and certainly would welcome any conversations on those. I guess on a more generic level, and this is probably across all of the supply chain really, I'd say probably technology. You know, whether that technology is about recovering a policy excess remotely, getting your recovery agent to take a photo so you can engineer, spit and cut down the life cycle of the claim, or from an insurance point of view, you know, re-platforming and spending multi-millions. I think an investment in technology is probably where I'd be looking. I think we've had a lot of proof with calls like this, and that the world can still turn round, you know, and who knew that virtual beers on a Friday night would be an exciting prospect to look forward to. So yeah, I guess one thing I'd say, technology is probably where I've been investing this time.
Okay, great stuff. Neil, same question to you in terms of stakeholder investment in energies and thoughts. And again, you know, you guys are kind of putting the questions out there and perhaps thinking a little bit differently.
Yeah, I think, Mark, I think that the insurance industry as a whole really needs to concentrate on the customer at the moment. The policyholders probably feeling a bit let down. Kudos to Admiral for being the first company to go out and say, actually, we're going to give you a refund because our costs are not as high as we expected when we set your premium. And I see today that AXA in Ireland have followed suit. You know, motor insurance has always been a grudge purchase, and I think that the industry needs to do quite a lot of work now to get the focus back on value of the product rather than just the cost of the product. I'm totally with Chris that actually, you know, I think this whole episode has highlighted how much insurers rely on their supply chains. You know, it's in no one's interest for supply chains to collapse. And so we do need to work together to keep those supply chains available for when volumes start to ramp up. You know, and I'm not just talking there about looking after the big boys, because quite often it's the smaller businesses that provide more care and flexibility and innovation with a customer. I'm not talking about you know, electronic solutions. I'm talking about a customer has got a problem, and quite often it's small family businesses that can deal with that better. So I think the whole supply chain needs to be protected. I think that you know, in terms of how do we approach bent metal in the future, I think that you wouldn't just ask your salvage experts the best way to deal with a total loss, right? Because, for example, repairers have got a good contribution to make to that discussion. So I think that getting your supply chain around the table to help you with your solutions, I think is something that if I were an insurer, I'd be spending a bit of time on. So not get away from kind of more of the silo mentality that perhaps was there pre-COVID. And I think just thinking a bit more broadly, one of the things for me is that, you know, Miles was just touching on it there. We're all doing things slightly differently now. We're working from home, and those of us that are working from home for the first time probably enjoying some aspects of that. You know, we miss going into the office to see our colleagues, we miss the routine. Actually, we like the work-life balance that that's giving us. And we know that most car crashes happen at rush hour. So there's a really good link there for me that it's in the insurance industry's best interest to avoid traffic at rush hour, to encourage some of these practices that we've all had to get used to over the last 6 weeks, and undoubtedly will remain in place for the next however many weeks. And I just wonder how insurers can come together to encourage, you know, different ways of working, which would ultimately perhaps cause a reduction in frequency of motor accidents. I don't have the answer on that, by the way, but there seems to be like a prize at the end of that road.
That's great stuff. Thanks, Neil. Dan, I'll come to you. Neil mentioned in there communication, and you've already mentioned it in terms of, you know, to your supply partners and obviously your customer base. On a sort of broader theme as well, communication across the industry, you know, body shops coming to you, talking to you proactively, is that something that you kind of encourage them to do from their side?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been really interesting actually. You know, I'm previously a chartered marketer, and my mindset's always been around value proposition and understanding. And you know, because of what has happened, we have entered into so many different conversations with companies who people would class as our competitors around supporting them through this time. You know, we were fortunate in the investment we've done in the sort of the IT and the technology that we still are and running at the same sort of levels of service that we were before, and we still have the same capabilities. So we've actively reached out to many different potential customers of the future who before, you know, people would have never expected us to speak to. But from a supply chain network point of view, you know, we have been open dialogue with every single one of our partners since the outset of this, because from a capability point of view and from an understanding point of view, you know, we need to be aware of what's happening in the macro and the micro environments. And yeah, absolutely, communication is key. You know, we like everybody else, we've been down the furlough route, we've had to do it. And you know, you've got to remember that you're communicating there with staff who are in a really emotional state. There's a lot going on at the moment. While the sun was out last week and the week before, it's totally different. All of a sudden you get the rain down and everyone's stuck inside. Some people haven't got gardens. It's a real sensitive time. You've got to remember we're all in this together. And, you know, as leaders of businesses, we've got a real responsibility to make sure that our people and our customers and our supply chain partners and, you know, our stakeholders in general are okay and well. And, yeah, we actively reach out all the time. I think it's really important.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Chris, I'll just come to you very quickly. We got another survey out there at the moment. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, really, this is just a follow-on from the survey that we did previously. It's going to be fascinating. At the point that the last survey was put out, between us and Tracker, we got the sort of feedback that about 50% of body shops were closing, about another 24% were planning to. We had all of the insight around whether they were going to be furloughing staff, etc. This next survey is going to give us all of that detail and exactly what has happened, exactly how much money body shops have lost, how many staff that they took off, what they're going to. So, this is going to be tremendously informative, and will serve as a fantastic record for what's happened through this period so far. It might be an opportunity to do more later on. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be sort of fascinating, and I think as we sort of come out of this, it's going to be all sorts of extra challenges for repairers, and I think a lot of them will also have reflected on some of the things that have meant a lot to them throughout this. Things like looking at big fixed costs that they've got. We've been used to getting a similar amount of work for many, many years, but once that sort of varies, it really does show how difficult it is to swallow fixed costs. Rental, people, the lease cars has been an enormous issue for repairers. Some of them £5,000 a month, and the average of a rental has gone from kind of like £10 per day, before all of the extra charges, to in lots of instances something like £35 a day when you look at the amount of cars that have gone out and the vehicles that they've got on the fleet. So I think everyone's going to have to really step back and have a real good think about how they can be more flexible in the future, turn more of their fixed costs into variable costs, and have a really good think about that. Okay,
that's brilliant. Now, very conscious of time, as we always are. People have got extremely busy schedules at the moment. So Chris has already alluded to it. Trend Tracker, ourselves and MBRA have got our second survey out for body shops. So the links are on kind of social media, or go to the Trend Tracker website. Hopefully we can get some a great gauge of the industry where it is currently. We'll bring some results to you next Wednesday in terms of that. As ARC360, we've also got a special event this Friday, which we'll be reporting on again next week. That ties into a lot of the questions that have come through in terms of people's thoughts on sizes of networks and body shop closures, relationships with suppliers, supply chains. So we will bring those responses and hopefully a little bit more insight from the overall industry to you next Wednesday. So appreciate all of those messages coming through. Some great thoughts, some great information, and we'll take it all away and obviously digest amongst us. Big thank you to Miles, Neil, Chris and Dan. Thank you very much for your time today. Again, it's really great to have this kind of whole rounded picture on the automotive industry as a whole. We all operate in our little silos, but again, this is impacted by so many bits across the supply chain that we just need to be aware of and keep tabs on. Thank you very much for everyone for joining us. Really appreciate it, and we'll see you again next Wednesday. Take care, everybody.